Between the Silent Hill 2 remake and Silent Hill F, it seems like Konami has been on a pretty good run when it comes to revitalizing what I once believed was a completely dead series. And recently, we've seen Silent Hill Townfall get officially unveiled with actual gameplay footage. And it seems like, kind of like the last two, F and the Silent Hill 2 remake, people are divided on what this means for the franchise. And a lot of that division comes from basically two main things. And that comes down to the first-person perspective, as well as the style of combat that's going to be portrayed in this first-person perspective. And in this video, I'm going to go over what I think of Silent Hill Townfall so far based off of what we've seen, as well as why I think this shift might actually be very good for this series. So let's take a look. To start, when I saw that Silent Hill Townfall was essentially going to be a first-person style horror game, it immediately brought me back to my initial feelings about Resident Evil 7. And to be fully transparent, we were coming off of Resident Evil 6, and that game, in my opinion, kind of sucked. And then we ended up seeing this shift to a first-person camera and first-person perspective, and I felt like that wasn't going to work. I actually initially avoided Resident Evil 7 because I thought that the game was not going to live up to the Resident Evil name and ultimately disappoint me. And I'm glad to say that I was completely wrong. When I say I'm completely wrong, I would argue Resident Evil 7 is probably one of my favorite survival horror games generally, and it's one of my favorite Resident Evil games for sure. And so watching Silent Hill Townfall kind of take a similar approach, I'm not mad at. I know that a lot of people are incredibly used to playing Silent Hill from a third-person perspective, and even in some cases, they like the old-school style Silent Hills with weird camera angles and those sorts of things. But I think for what the developers are trying to accomplish and what Silent Hill as a franchise has kind of evolved into, I think the first-person perspective is actually going to work very well. I think it's going to add a lot of tension. I think it's going to add a lot of immersion to this, what looks to be a Silent Hill type world. And I'm saying that very specifically because we've seen sort of the missteps with the Silent Hill franchise from previous Western developers, but it looks like this has the Silent Hill aesthetic. It has the Silent Hill monsters. It has the Silent Hill environments. And so ultimately, I think the first-person view is really going to bring this to the focal point of all gamers in a really good way, in a very impactful way as well. And this leads me to my next point. With that shift to the first-person camera angle, we see a little glimpse of the combat in the trailer that was recently released. Now, it's really hard to ascertain how the combat is going to feel or actually work based off of the short snippets that we've been shown. But I'm holding a lot of, how do I say this, optimism that it's going to get fleshed out and it's going to work. And what I mean is, Silent Hill F, even the Silent Hill 2 remake, I even made a video in the early days of the Silent Hill 2 remake stating that I thought the game was going to be dead on arrival based off of the combat. But I think just based off of the track record of those two games where a lot of people cast doubt on the actual combat and then they played the games and they saw what the developers did and they actually appreciated and enjoyed the combat, I'm very hopeful that Townfall is going to maintain the same sort of thing. And again, this is supposed to be a survival horror game, and it looks like it's setting out to be a more atmospheric Silent Hill horror game. So what I mean is I don't think we're going to get, Last Action Hero quality action. This is going to be a horror game. It's going to have a bit of weight to it. It's going to maybe be slow in some cases or clunky even based off of the scenario, which for Silent Hill games are what I expect and what I appreciate about those types of games because it adds to the helplessness and the horror essentially in those games. Now, another thing I want to highlight, and this is just more of a general point, one of my biggest complaints with previous Western developed Silent Hill entries, especially with Downpour, for example, is the monster design sucked. Even you look at Downpour and even look at that god-awful Silent Hill Ascension movie game thing, the monster designs just were not good. And so that immediately turned me off, because for Silent Hill, one of the things about those games is the actual monster designs kind of reflecting a lot of the trauma of the characters, and that being disturbing is something that really adds to the aesthetic of that game, and to me is genre defining and game defining ultimately for that type of game. Silent Hill F, I held a healthy level of skepticism, because I was worried that it would go down the same path as previous failures in the Silent Hill intellectual property, essentially, but I was wrong. And the developers, in my opinion, did a phenomenal job of creating these very disturbing and weird monsters that really helped flesh out the story as well as the game. And it looks like, from the glimpse that I'm seeing from the Townfall trailer and even just the aesthetic overall, the developers are doing the same thing and introducing and developing and creating these weird, bizarre, disturbing monsters, which to me is everything I expect from a Silent Hill game. And further to that, the setting itself, I think, looks great. It looks like essentially a Silent Hill style town, but as I understand, this is its own kind of secluded island that's not Silent Hill. And again, I know there's a lot of people who are back and forth about whether Silent Hill F even counts as a Silent Hill because it was in Japan. And it looks like Townfall is taking this away from America as well and putting it, I believe, in Scotland. And look, I'm cool with that. I like this idea, and I thought, as far as I'm concerned, I don't even think, I would argue I know Silent Hill F to me is a Silent Hill game. And I feel like Townfall is going down that same route in a good way, and it's going to be that developer's unique take on what Silent Hill is, and really bringing that type of horror that we've come to expect from Silent Hill, and giving it its own unique twist from this camera angle or this first-person view, and with a brand new, fresh story. Now, the one thing that I will say that I'm kind of holding a bit of reservation on is actually coming down to the story. What I mean is, the story itself, from what we gather, right? I'm not, how do I say this? I'm just really hoping this isn't going to be trying to connect too much to the original Silent Hill cult plot. And I only say that because we have the main character, Simon, who's hearing kind of a communication from some unknown woman about how he's, trying to make things right and won't be able to. And I'm just really hoping this has nothing to, or it doesn't have some deep-rooted connection to the Silent Hill cult. We saw that with Homecoming, and Homecoming, in my opinion, didn't do a great job of trying to connect all those things. And in general, I feel like the cult aspect of Silent Hill is kind of played out and doesn't work that great, especially when it comes to adding fresh new additions to the series. Silent Hill F had kind of its own version of the cult, but I thought for the actual game, it worked incredibly well. And it didn't try too hard to connect itself to the previous Silent Hill games. There were a couple nods to Silent Hill, but it wasn't trying too hard to make itself deeply rooted into that. And I'm just hopeful that the story itself isn't going to try to do that. Now, again, I'm just going off of a couple quick blurbs that we've seen from the trailer, so I can be completely off base. I'm hopeful that they're going to have kind of a fresh take on the story generally, and that from what we hear, this isn't something to do with, him doing something against the cult or something that caused all this madness that you experience in the game. That's what I'm hopeful for. But so far, from what I'm seeing from this short trailer that we recently got, I'm excited for Townfall, and I'm very hopeful that this game is going to maintain the legacy of Silent Hill, and especially in the recent run that we've seen, in a very good way, and help continue to revitalize this series and continue pushing it forward so we can get other great solid entries in the series.